Well, good morning, my friends. It's your old pal, Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said well. Today we are going to do a filming location vlog that I have wanted to do since I started vlogging, and it's a movie I've loved since I was a kid. It's starring Anna Chlumsky, Macaulay Culkin, Dan Aykroyd, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Griffin Dunne. It's My Girl. Daze with Jordan the Lion. It begins right now. Well, there it is. Veda Sultanfuss's house, and they have a little Veda in the window up there. That's great. That's so cool to know that somebody that bought this house loves that movie. The neighbors saw me coming over here and they said, oh, don't worry, they love, they don't mind. See, there's Veda. So the first time we see this is when Veda is charging her friends, those little kids, to see a dead body. And you see those cracks on the ground right there? When she's talking to the kids, you can actually see that behind Thomas J's head, which is really cool. So she charges her friends to go see a dead body. From this angle, we see Shelly, who's played by Jamie Lee Curtis, in her motorhome coming around this corner. And then she pulls right up here, and they still have that ledge right there. The horse hookup is still there, and you see her pull up right beside that tree the first time. So it's really, really, really accurate. I mean, nothing has really changed since the movie. Now, Jamie Lee Curtis comes here to get a job, and she thinks that it's for a makeup artist, which it is, but for dead people, because the Sultanfuss parlor sign is right here, but it's actually a funeral parlor. So we see this a few times in the movie, like I said, when Thomas J and Veda are sitting out on the front steps and they're talking, and Veda's friends come up, and it's actually Jamie Lee Curtis, Macaulay Culkin, and Anna Chlumsky all sitting on the steps right there. And then Veda's friends are pretty much where we are and start singing, making fun of her, saying they're going to the movies, and they're like, Veda and Thomas J sitting in a tree, doing that whole thing, and she's sitting up there getting upset. Shelly's telling her, don't let him bother you, don't let him get to you. But then we see this again when Shelly puts makeup on Veda, and Veda comes out and Thomas J's sitting on the steps, and Veda lays right there on that second step, and he's saying, what's that all over your face? And she says, a girl can never have too much eye makeup. A lot happens here. A whole lot of stuff happens here. And then of course the hearse would have been parked up the side. Sorry, it's really windy out here today. The hearse would have been parked up the side. And that's where we see this shot when her ex-husband Danny and Alf show up on 4th of July to try and take Shelly's motorhome back. They go up this walkway, and back there is where the 4th of July barbecue is happening. And then when Veda finds the photo of her parents before she was born, the photo is actually taken right here. Yeah, you sure can. So the hearse would have been parked over there on the other side of that ramp and everything, and they would have been having the barbecue right out in here. That's when Shelly's ex-husband shows up and tries to get the camper, and Harry invites him to stay and have some hot dogs if they want, and then punches the ex-husband in the stomach and tells him basically to get lost, because he looks at the brother of this guy and says, who are you? And he says, I'm his brother. He says, oh, then we'll be seeing a lot of you. And he goes, why is that? And he said, because if he ever tries to take her camper again, I'm going to bury him in my front lawn. So another important scene here is when they're all sitting up here, Shelly and Thomas J and Veda, and Shelly asks about Veda's mood ring. And Veda says that she always wears it, and Thomas J is saying he doesn't think it works because it's always black. And Veda says, that's just because you always put me in a bad mood. But of course later on she ends up losing that mood ring, and Thomas J goes out to look for it for her, That's where we have the real tragic scene of the movie. I was really hoping to see, I know as crazy as it sounds, to see those two. I was just curious if they'd still be here, because there's that scene where her camper is parked right here, and Thomas J and Veda, when they're sitting up there, ask if they can get a tour of her camper, and she says yeah, so they run in there, and while they're sitting at that table, that's when Thomas J asks if he can have a cookie and finds her money. And we kind of figure out at the end of the movie that Veda took some of that money to take the creative writing class with Mr. Bixler, the $35. Even though Shelley wasn't all that keen on, you know, putting makeup on dead people, she liked the idea that she would be working with a family, and of course she falls in love with Harry. And we see a shot from the corner of the house where Dan Aykroyd, playing Harry, is playing his tuba. He's playing I'm Just Wild About Harry for his mom. So they kind of show the side view of the house like that when he's playing the tuba scene. This is really, really sad also, because this is where, after Thomas J gets stung by all the bees and he passes away, this is where his funeral is. So if you went in right inside the door, the staircase that we always see Veda sitting on is right up here, and then where they had Thomas J's funeral would have been in there, and he would have been in the casket at the far end. Now this is definitely one of those movies where they used a lot of movie magic. All the locations are kind of spread out all over Florida, so we're going to do as many as we can today. So the only one around here was right here, so we're going to head out and take off to Sanford now. All right, we made it to the downtown Sanford area. This was not in the movie, but how can you pass it up? So right here is where we have the montage of Veda and Thomas J riding their bikes, and you have Good Lovin', one of the greatest songs of that time, playing in the background. You see Thomas J, Macaulay Culkin, and Veda riding their bikes across here, and then they're coming this way, riding their bikes down this street, and that's when Thomas J says, "Look, no feet." He puts his feet off to the side, and she goes, "Yeah, you're a real Evel Knievel." And there, you can literally see this line throughout the whole shot, and they just keep coming towards us. And it's cool to see that this is still here, because when they're riding this way, you can definitely see that above their heads in the shot. Look at the mural he's creating. So right here on this vacant lot, literally a parking lot, was where that brick building is that we see Thomas and Veda riding their bikes and cutting into, going up that ramp. And the guy, we see them coming out in the back alley that literally was right behind there. We see the guy come out there yelling at him, and I'll tell you how you can tell exactly this is where it was. And this building right here is our tell-all. This is how I figured it out. Check this out. The way you can tell is when they're riding their bikes right off through here, you can see that. This building would have been like a whitish yellow, but you can see this kind of crazy difference in the way the brickwork is right there. And you can see these two window ledges right there with this pipe going right through it. So when I come back here, look for those in this shot. And the guy standing over here going, "What the hell are you doing in my garage? Get the hell out of here!" as they're riding off down there. Isn't that cool? Some mosaic art here. Just because the movie was filmed here, they should have the Nixon Agnew pin somewhere in there. Is that for Elvis? EP? Take a look at this old faded Coca-Cola sign. How great is that? So then we see them riding their bikes down this alleyway. You can even tell from these little two windows in the background as they're riding down through here. Right there is where that Richard Nixon for president, Nixon Agnew sign was. So they round this corner on their bikes, and right over here where they have these fun pick kind of things you can put your head through, they park their bikes. Thomas J and Veda park their bikes right there because the center door takes you upstairs, which is Dr. Welty's office. Every time Veda goes there, she thinks she's got some ailment from someone who's been at her dad's funeral parlor, so he always checks her over and then says, Veda, did so-and-so get brought to your house today? Because one of the times she's describing having prostate cancer. And then we see this at the end. She comes here after Thomas J dies, complaining, saying, make it stop, Dr. Welty, make it stop. And he says, make what stop? And she says, the bee stings. And it's because Thomas J's died. She's taking on his ailment because her mother died when she was born, so she thinks that she's always dying. So right upstairs would have been Dr. Welty's office. Nope, it's locked. I was hoping to show up there at the top of the stairs because we always see Veda rounding the corner going into the office from at the top of those stairs in the movie. So after she leaves the office, we see her coming out here getting on her bike, and he says, what did he say? And she turns her bike around right here. She says, the whole medical profession is a crock. Now we've come to the end of the movie at the breezeway. We actually see Dan Aykroyd, Harry Sultan Fuss sitting at the table eating, and Thomas J's mom knocks on the window, and he comes right out this door and starts talking to her and asks how she's doing. That's when she says, some days are better than others, some days I think I'll be okay, and then others says, how's Veda doing? And then Veda is actually right up at the counter. So she comes out and they start talking, and Thomas J's mom says that they found Veda's mood ring on Thomas J when he had passed away, so she gives Veda the mood ring, and they're right over here, and Veda puts the mood ring on, and instead of it being black like it's always been through the movie, it's now blue. And then we see Thomas J's mom walk down the street. Really amazing decorations though here at the breezeway. Gotta love it. Aren't these great? So we're gonna go to our next location. Still here in Sanford, Mr. Bixler's house. Thanks for the help, honey. Not part of the filming location, but that is an amazing mural. Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson. I dig it. This is where we see Thomas J and Veda riding their bicycles right along here, and they actually stop right here because they see Mr. Bixler, Veda's teacher, and the teacher that she has a crush on, it's Griffin Dunn, has a ladder right up here in that section, and he's painting his house. And Veda and Thomas J stop, and you see that tree right here when you do the turnaround shots, and Veda's telling him that she's already read all the required reading for the summer, and he says, really, Veda? Shouldn't he be out playing? What about you, Thomas J? And he says he hasn't even started. So we see him up there painting a little bit closer to the top, and she says, Mr. Bixler, why are you fixing this old house for just you? And he's come down here and he's mixing the paint. He said, well, I might get a dog. She said, well, how are you gonna pay for it? And he said that he's teaching the creative writing class. So she, you know, that's when she decides, well, you can see in her mind the wheels are turning, that she can hang out with him if she takes the class. So yeah, pretty cool scene. So of course then they go to take off, standing right there with that tree over them, and they say they're gonna take off for the on their bikes, and we see Griffin Dunn, Mr. Bixler, jump back on the ladder and start going up the ladder. Now we also see this later on in the movie, after Thomas J has passed away and Veda's been in solitude in her room. She comes over to see Mr. Bixler and to cry and to tell him that she's in love with him. And right when that's happening, she says, "No, no, I love you the way my dad loved Shelley, not like a teacher." And you see his girlfriend, well, fiance, comes to the door, and he says that this is his fiance and everything, and that they're getting ready to head over to her house for Thomas J's funeral. So Veda gets upset and hurt, and she runs out of here and takes off again. Our next location is in Plant City. So here's our next location. You never see that plaque because the way they shoot this, it's always shot like this with that post covering the shot right there. But this is where Mr. Bixler's creative writing class is. So when Veda pays that $35 that she swiped from Shelley's cookie jar, she comes here and enrolls in that adult writing class. And Mr. Bixler tells her, you know, this is for adults. And she says she still wants to do it, and the classmates are all supportive. So she attends here. We see this 2 or 3 times in the movie because we see one of her classes here where she meets up with Thomas J coming down the steps. And then after Thomas J passes away, she comes here to do her Weeping Willow poem. And that would have been in one of those rooms up there. They had that class. That's also where that guy says, "No, no, no, Veda, you gotta feel my aura." And she says, "I don't think I'm allowed." So she comes here after Thomas J dies, because this is where, you know, Mr. Bixler says, like, the whole point of this creative writing is to, like, express in words how you view the world. And so this is a real life learning lesson, this whole movie, this time frame in her life. So she comes in here and she does that Weeping Willow about her and Thomas J. And then when she leaves, she comes out of those doors, which would have been brown at the time. And the other side of the building, this is the high school. It looks exactly like this, except it has a door in the center instead and no doors over there. So it's definitely this side. So she comes out and her friend is waiting out here, the friend that her dad owns the movie theater, when the girls are picking on Veda when they're sitting on the front steps of her house. She's actually waiting for her out here, and she comes out. And I also noticed that they removed this railing right here for filming. It wasn't here during the shots, but when Veda is coming down, her friend's sitting here, they start walking down. Veda mentions that Mr. Nixon got reelected by the Republican Party to run for president again. So it was 1972, and her bicycle, they would have had like a little bike rack right here, and her bicycle was in there, and she grabs her bike, and that's when they end the movie, her and her friend riding away. So right here is Thomas J's house. When Veda gets tired of waiting at the top of the steps for her father and Shelley to come back, she comes walking. There used to be a tree right over here. She comes walking around the tree, sneaks beside this, and then we see her crawling up those steps. There's Thomas J's front door, and then she walks over and is trying to get his attention through the glass. She's over there like waving her hands and whatever and trying to get his attention while his family is watching the old westerns. And he ends up coming out here, right out that front door, and he can't find Veda. So he comes over here and he's like, "Veda, where are you?" And he's standing right here, and she pops up from that railing over there and climbs over and tells him that they're at the church, that Shelley and her dad are at the church having a date, and that she wants to go over and spy on him. He says, "Are you kidding?" Thomas J's standing right here, Macaulay Culkin. "Are you kidding? If my mom finds out I'm outside, she'll skin me alive." Veda says, "Pacifist." He goes, "I am not." She starts walking towards us to come walk away, and he goes, She says, bedwetter. He said, you know I stopped that. But as a good friend that he is, he ends up taking off with Veda to go to our next location, which is the church, where bingo night is, date night for Shelly and Harry. All right, we've made it to our next location, the church where Shelly and Harry have their first date. Even though this is the church we see in the movie, you never see the full church. What you see is the whole bingo tent is set up over there, so they must have planted that tree afterward. But you see, Veda has went off and got Thomas J to sneak out of his house, and they come here, and there was originally, during the movie, there would have been those white poles that made that little fence line, and they're walking down through here, and you see them clearly walk right past these sections of the church because they're gonna spy on Shelly and Harry. Because Veda's mom, as we find out in the movie, had died obviously when she was being born, so Harry hasn't dated since then. So his idea of a good night is going out to bingo, and they had created the bingo tent right here. And Shelly, which is Jamie Lee Curtis, of course, and Harry, which is Dan Aykroyd, are sitting, you know, basically like right there at a table together. And Thomas J and Veda would have been right here, basically behind the barrier of the tent, watching their date. And that's when Harry's describing this whole theory he has of laying out his numbers so that he gets more action. She goes, do you win more? And he goes, no, just more action. And they sit down, and Shelly looks around. She says, oh my God, Harry, I just had a horrible thought. And he said, what's that? And she said, I'm gonna be putting makeup on some of these people very soon. And he looks at her and says, why do you think these two seats were empty? Oh, little dark humor. So then as they keep talking and everything, then they're about to kiss, and Veda and Thomas J, of course, like I said, are right here, and Veda yells out a fake bingo, and everyone starts looking around, and then the two old guys that are sitting on the other sides of Shelly and Harry start getting into a fight. Nobody yelled bingo, it came from outside, what do you know? Well, yeah, you know, it's great. But it's really cool to see this, even though this tree is here. Maybe the tree was trimmed back or something, but definitely this is where they built the tent, because when they walk past this, I mean, it starts pretty much right here. All right, we're taking a long drive out kind of to the middle of nowhere in the hopes that we'll get to see the tree. All right, so the tree, the friendship tree that we always see Veda and Thomas J climbing or fishing from the dock of, is actually on Mirror Lake, and it's on private property. But the people that live closest to it were nice enough to let me come out here and look at it. I love this part of the movie. There's actually like 3 scenes out here. So I'm just gonna hop over this thing because it's actually right there. Wow, that is so crazy to see. There's the early shots we see, the first shot is kind of like from a side angle. What you don't know is that wasn't a real tree. They couldn't find exactly what they wanted, so they built it. So they brought pieces of metal out here and then wrapped part of the tree around it. You can actually see right here, the water has risen considerably since filming, because there used to be a dock that went straight out there, because you see early on, see there's part of the metal actually right there. You see early on in the movie, the first time that they're out here, it's kind of like a shot from kind of like right here, and Thomas J is hanging from this part of the tree, and Veda says, hey, you got a bite, and he hops down, runs over to the dock, which would have been out there, and he pulls his fish in, and then he doesn't like to touch a fish, so he starts to step on it to take the hook out, and she says, no, 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 you're gonna kill it. So she takes the hook out and then sticks her finger in his bleeding. So she says, hey, we could become blood brothers. He says, no, I don't wanna. She goes, come on, just pick that scab, we'll be blood brothers. So right there is where they become blood brothers. And then that's also where they have their first kiss. Thomas J kicked the hornet's nest, and they were getting chased, or the bee's nest, and got chased by the bees, and he's allergic to them, so they go running down the dock that would have been right here to jump in the water. Then they have their first kiss out there. And then sadly at the end of the movie, after Thomas J has died from kicking the bee's nest, trying to find Veda's ring, after they kiss, kind of that moment, his like first moment in love, and she lost her ring, so he's out looking for it. God, it's so cool to see that tree. Who knows how long it'll be here. But she comes out here and kind of has that moment where she's thinking about life, and you almost think like she's climbing this tree like she wants to fall out of it and maybe die or something, because he just died. But as she looks down into the water and the lily pads and everything, she has second thoughts and decides not to do it. Man, so cool to see this tree. Honest to God, look at this. I mean, I'm gonna zoom in, take a look. I can't get close enough to it because the water is expanded, but look, you can see right under this bark, you can see the metal. And then that whole, all those weeping willows and everything that would have been on here, the leaves and everything, that's what she writes that poem about, her last poem, that's about the tree, but Thomas J and her life and everything. Those were all, you know, fake leaves and everything. And you can kind of tell if you look at it, they're very green compared to like here, where they're a lighter shade of green or almost like dying. So cool to see this, the My Girl tree. All right, my friends, we're gonna call it a day. I wanna thank Harvey Johnson for becoming my newest Patreon. Thank you all for watching. I love this movie. It's something I've wanted to see my whole life. Even before I was a vlogger, I wanted to see these locations, and I'm glad I got to see them before they're gone. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great night, and go watch My Girl. Goodbye.